One of the biggest advantages of being a patient gamer that buys games on sale, and a backlog gamer at that, is that you're going to be a lot less prone to feel burned, either by the price of the games, messed up launches, or simply getting burned out from playing so many games at launch with so many similar features. Among the games that fit in the last category, Far Cry 4 is, to be completely honest, Far Cry 3 except it has more polished mechanics. In fact, and for the sake of curiosity, I went back to replay a couple hours of Far Cry 3, then did the same with Blood Dragon, and even played a couple hours of Far Cry 5 to notice that yes, the core mechanics are essentially the same, but the real difference comes with how these mechanics are implemented and what kind of changes they do between releases, whether it is for the better or for the worst. In Far Cry 4, we play as AJ Gali, who is traveling to the fictional country of Kyrat, and he is there with a mission to spread the ashes of his mother, but before he realizes, he finds himself kidnapped and he can find himself caught up in a nasty civil war with a very disorganized resistance, or just fulfill his mission without major incident. It all depends on how patient he is and if you are willing to wait 15 minutes of real time. But if you do decide to go on this adventure, you will enter this chaotic world full of exploration, gunfights, drugs, and spiritual journeys. Because despite having a pretty weak storyline, it still makes for a pretty beefy gameplay package. From the moment you finish the opening sequence, the game lets you play to your heart's content. While I would love to say the open world gameplay here can be really good, I have to admit it only gets there once you get past the initial grind. Because much like with Far Cry 3, you need to gather animal skins in order to increase your horribly limited inventory, and given how combat heavy most of the gameplay can be, you will want to have as much equipment as possible. But once you get past that grind, the entire country becomes your playground. How you deal with enemies and other objectives is only limited to your own skills and imagination. You can either try and be sneaky, silently taking everybody out. You can go guns blazing and destroy everybody in your path, or you can do both options with completely different twists. Just to put into perspective what kind of fun this game lets you have, if I want to, I can sneak into enemy territory, let a caged animal loose, and there start taking down any guard the animal is mauling to death. If I want to make it more interesting and more intense, I can get on an elephant, rush into the objective area, and completely wreak havoc among my enemies as I ride this Ivory Fang tank of death. Or if I just don't want to deal with enemies zeroing in on me, I can just get on a mini chopper and start doing a one-man airstrike with a grenade launcher that you can get very early in the game that is actually counted as a sidearm that you can shoot from anywhere. The possibilities are just immense, and that is just beautiful. Now, while I did say that the open world stuff gets really good once you get past the initial grind, I'm not going to deny or defend how the side stuff in these games are legitimate copy-pastas just so you can complete the arbitrary checklist for the 100% completion. But the way they are implemented, you can actually have small little gameplay moments, where you make your way through the world, sometimes by even swinging on a rope, because there are areas in the game that you cannot reach even with a mini chopper. But of course, as I said, a lot of these activities are copy-pasted, with the only real difference being what part of the map you're doing them on, and just how much the assets are being repeated. And that is precisely why back in 2014 people started to get tired of the Ubisoft open world formula, and why everything starts to feel a bit too samey. Kyrat is a gigantic landmass of collectibles and other stuff for your checklist. And if you decide to buy the upgrades that let you see every collectible on the map, well, you will realize it's a little bit busy. And the more you decide to move around grabbing every collectible you can, the more the tedium will start to set in. And that is honestly the one true issue with this game and most of the Ubisoft formula in general. Tedium. Moving from point A to point B, whether it is to do story, side quests, or just grabbing collectibles, can get old at times. Thankfully, this gets mitigated with the mini chopper and other vehicles, but spawn points are not very consistent unless you fast travel to one of the few particular spawn points for him, and even then, you may be a long way from your objective. But not everything is doom and gloom. While the flaws I mentioned are very real and there is a fair share of frustrating elements, they are not enough to truly bring the game down. I managed to finish the campaign in less than 20 hours and I had a grand old time while doing it. I simply prioritized doing only what was necessary to get me to the next part of the story and save the 100% completion for after I beat the game. And I feel that's the better way to handle a Ubisoft open world game. I said this before, and I will say it as often as necessary. You don't have to 100% complete a game in order to feel you got your money's worth. If you made it to the credits, and you felt the game gave you a grand old time, then that is honestly enough to say the game did its job well. Speaking of doing their job well, as I mentioned earlier, the story is pretty weak. Much like with Far Cry 3, the writers put you into a dark, silly, chaotic world, where they try to give you poorly written grey morality, while also clumsily trying to guilt-trip you for playing violent video games. Far Cry is always at its worst when it tries to get preachy about its subtext and how it clumsily tries to deconstruct tropes. But that's okay really, because Far Cry is at its best when it's not taking itself too seriously. The best parts of Far Cry 4's story missions are when the game stops trying to be this war drama and it just lets you enjoy the gameplay, and it does it with some really good set pieces. Moments when you can just have fun unloading your ammo on your enemies while you're tripping hard. Moments where after climbing one of the many towers in the game, you can simply just jump off and fly away in your wingsuit. Moments when you are having flashbacks of your ancestor visiting the afterlife as he glides to the mystical sky and battles demons while fighting 5 arrows at a time. Moments when you actually feel like an action hero and you're actually playing a video game. And that's honestly the biggest priority for me, the gameplay. I can handle bad stories in games as long as the gameplay keeps me engaged and entertained. Thankfully, the game has its fair share of funny characters and legitimate fun story missions, and the gameplay does manage to carry the entire experience. When you're not doing collectibles at least. It's a shame that the game doesn't have multiple save files. Given the multiple branching path it offers, it's weird really, because in a very good twist, they actually implemented replayable missions without having to reset the entire map. And yet, there are many other missions that cannot be replayed unless you delete your save file and start all over. Thankfully, one thing you can enjoy over and over are the custom maps. In a small but very awesome move, they added a map editor, and even today there are some really good custom maps. Some of them could easily fit into the main game with how well they are made, while some others can give you just a little outlet to mess around and have fun when the sheer bizarre chaos of it. There is also a multiplayer mode, but to be completely honest, I could care less about it, and by the looks of it neither did the community, as it died within months of the release. Overall, Far Cry 4 is a legit good game. If you enjoyed Far Cry 3, I'd say give it a go, but if open world games are not your thing, then there is a good chance the tedium might overtake you. But I do have to say, even with the shortcomings, I still feel it's a really good gameplay package. At least if you're looking to go into some really fun first-person Tomb Raider-esque adventures. And that is why I'm giving Far Cry 4 a very decent and well-deserved 7 out of 10. It's not really breaking any grounds, but at the very least it manages to do very well the majority of the things it sets itself out to do. And you know what? Sometimes that is what matters. I do wish they will try and give the player character a better personality, if at all, but given what I have seen in Far Cry 5 so far, I don't think I'll be holding my breath anytime soon.